Connects all the loose ends perfectly. And this also answers that we come to the book of Leviticus. None of you shall approach anyone who is near kin to him to uncover his nakedness. I am the Lord. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother you shall not uncover. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness. This is the key. Your father's nakedness is referred to as the nakedness of your father's wife. This whole chapter is about sexual prohibitions. And if the author of Genesis also wrote Leviticus, then this section in Leviticus would be the key to interpreting the passage in Genesis. So if uncovering your father's nakedness means to sleep with your father's wife, then the section in Genesis just took a really dark turn. We know that there were only 8 people that left the ark: Noah, his 3 sons, and all of them had wives, including Noah. If this section in Leviticus is key to understanding what happened with Noah's son, then Ham must have seen his father's nakedness by sleeping with his father's wife, who is his own mother, Mora. Then Lot went up out of Zor and dwelt in the mountains, and his 2 daughters were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Zor. And he and his 2 daughters dwelt in a cave. Now the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is no man on earth to come in to us, as is the custom of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. So they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. It happened on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, Indeed, I lay with my father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight also, and you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. Then they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him. And he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. Doesn't that sound similar to Noah's story? Contextualization is always key. Check out the parallels in these 2 stories. Mass destruction and death just happened with the flood of the earth and the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Both fathers, Noah and Lot, were passed out drunk with wine. Lot's daughters have non-consensual sex with their father, then become pregnant with child while their father was passed out. Now, if we plug in the theory of Ham and the rape of his mother in blue, if Ham did rape his mother, he would have had non-consensual sex with his parent, and if that is true, then the rape could have resulted in a pregnancy. Do you see how these stories connect perfectly as contextualized parallels? I believe this story about Lot and his daughters was only told to help reveal what happened to Noah and his son Ham. This is how much credence I place in repeated parallels. But this is going to go way beyond just the parallels and connect so many other things. Now go back and think about what we talked about in the beginning. Ham being the father of Canaan was so important it was mentioned twice. The theory of Ham raping his mother that produced a child would account for that double mention. The writer was drawing your attention to the fact that Ham was the father of Canaan and not anyone else, especially not Noah. And if you understand the relationships at play here, if Noah's wife was the mother of Canaan through rape, then Canaan would not only be Noah's grandson through Ham, but also his son through his wife. And if Canaan was a son of Noah, then the reading of Genesis 9:24 flips around to mean someone entirely different. So Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. This younger son in verse 24 now would be referring to Canaan, the 4th son of Noah. This verse could mean that he woke up to see the shame he felt towards Canaan's existence. This theory, although troubling, is starting to make sense of things. 4 sons of Noah, with the birth order being Ham, Japheth, Shem, and then the 4th son Canaan. This would connect with Ham being the firstborn. This would fulfill the firstborn curse as Ham raped his mother, which would qualify as part of the curse, while none of the other sons of Noah are mentioned as doing anything wrong. Then this order would also fit the description of Japheth being the older brother of Shem in Genesis 10:21. Then lastly, Genesis 9:24 about Noah seeing what his younger son did to him would mean that Canaan, being his youngest son through a rape of his wife, would account for the shame he felt towards his younger son. This theory connects all the loose ends perfectly. And this also answers the biggest question as to why Noah would curse his own grandson Canaan. It only makes sense if Canaan was also his illegitimate son, the product of a heinous rape.
Throughout the entire Old Testament period. Something that you might not have noticed before was that 2 times Moses informed us that Ham is the father of Canaan. This repetition is obviously intentional and primes the reader that Canaan is directly connected with Ham's sin somehow. Because at this point in the post-flood world, you have Ham with his first 3 sons being born, then Canaan is born as his 4th son. And since Arphaxad was born 2 years after the flood, and he's Shem's 3rd son, you know that at least 3 of Shem's 5 sons are already around, and most likely a few of Japheth's 7 sons were already born before Canaan too. And this makes sense since the first thing after the flood subsided was that God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth." So they're doing exactly what God instructed them to do in repopulating the earth. So with this understanding, we know that Canaan is somehow directly tied to Ham's sin. If Canaan isn't directly connected to Ham's sin, then there's no justification for Grandpa pronouncing a curse on him while all his older brothers, and Dad especially for that matter, getting a free pass. So to any type of scrutiny. Which now brings us to the incest view. Its footing is in verse 24 that says that Ham had done something to Noah while he was drunk and naked in the tent. The textual support for this lies not on the surface level of verse 22, where it says that Ham just saw the nakedness of his father, but that to see nakedness is actually an idiom for sexual intercourse, or sexual intercourse. And because of verse 24, proponents of the incest view say that this was paternal raping as to usurp Noah's patriarchal authority over the family. That would give us probable cause as to why Ham committed such a heinous act, but in what way is Canaan involved as to warrant him receiving the curse and not Ham? There is none. And the Talmudic writer understood this as well. So, even though the paternal incest view can have a strong textual case built up for it, it still fails the second test on why Canaan received the curse instead of Ham himself. Now, I can imagine some of you have breathed in a sigh of relief that Ham didn't rape his dad. So now what? Because it seems like we're kind of out of viewpoints now. Well, that's not quite so. There's one more option out there that you might have never heard about, and that is the maternal incest view. Yes, it was mom and not dad who Ham raped. Back to Ezekiel 22, you see father's nakedness is always associated with sexual intercourse with women. And if you glance at Ezekiel 23, you can see that nakedness is only used in context with female intercourse. And now, launching us all the way back to Leviticus 18, all of those with the nakedness scenarios laid out deal with females. But when you get to verse 22, that prohibits homosexual intercourse, that nakedness is no longer used. And even in Leviticus 20:13, that prohibits homosexuality as well, it never uses uncovering nakedness. But immediately starts using it again when describing intercourse with females that are near of kin. So the maternal incest view holds up exegetically. And what could have made this easier for everyone to spot was if verse 21's his tent was translated her tent, because in Hebrew it ends with a third feminine singular suffix, and you can easily compare this to Genesis 24:67, with Isaac taking Rebekah into his deceased mother's tent to take her as his wife. But whose tent it was doesn't really matter, because everyone was pretty inebriated from drinking all the wine, and the main point is that Ham uncovered the nakedness of his mother. So what ties Canaan directly into this story? Well, It's that Canaan is the offspring of Ham's raping of his mother. And when Noah finds out what happens, that he curses the offspring of this illicit, unholy union, which is consistent with the other two illicit unions in the Genesis narratives. The first one you had was back in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, with the sons of God taking the daughters of men that produced the Nephilim. The third one was with Lot and his two daughters that produced the Moabites and the Ammonites. So when you compare our current narrative to the other ones, that you see how it coherently ties in together with them. And you could say that these first two illicit stories form an inclusio around the flood narrative, as they are the starting and ending stories to Noah's story in the biblical account. In comparing the latter two, you can see how these two have the same motif of drunken episodes and incest involved that produced evil nations that were a thorn in Israel's side throughout the entire Old Testament period. So, with this, it becomes easily understandable why Moses mentioned Ham, that he was the father of Canaan twice, and the second time in conjunction with seeing the nakedness of his father. But
there are strong dark forces dwelling in the north. That region of the world is ruled by descend from. How is it today the presence of the serpent seed is obsolete according to the synagogue of Satan? In the meantime, there is a group of people that dwell among us with strange DNA and share the same appearance with the seed of the fallen.
And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight.
The Bible revealed two beginnings for mankind. The first beginning is when the Most High created man in his own image and likeness. The other beginning is when the Watchers procreated with the daughters of men and had children in their likeness. As a result of the union between the daughters of men and the Watchers, two different species of mankind was created. The Most High is responsible for one species. Too many people cannot understand because they have been programming religion to believe we are one people. I find it interesting that we are one people, yet the indigenous Black people are not treated as such in the beast system. The Most High breathed the breath of life into the people he made in his image and likeness.
And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul, saith the Lord.
History revealed the colonial masters came from the north. Remember, Satan said he would sit on the mount of the congregation on the sides of the north. The other species of mankind, whom the synagogue of Satan called Neanderthals, come from the north. There are strong dark forces dwelling in the north. That region of the world is ruled by high-level principalities. Most of the superpower nations of today resides in the sides of the north. America and Canada are a part of the north. History revealed European males were looking for land to colonize. Most High stopped viewing the world in the perception of the workers of iniquity in the beast system. They would have an eye to see and an ear to hear. Israelites, I'm not here to educate the other species of mankind and their numerous subgroups. The demons in the flesh already know who they are and their origin. They spent many generations concealing who they are for you to never find out. The awakening is for the people who wants truth, as well as deepening their spiritual roots. The other species of mankind are not interested in the truth. The truth for them is a dagger to the heart. The truth is a testimony of their fate. The truth is not good news for them. The scripture said the truth set us free. For them, the truth is judgment that will lead them into bondage.
He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints.
The other species of mankind are not captives. Their kind are the ones holding the indigenous Black people in captivity. I never understand why the other species of mankind believe they need a savior. What are you being saved from? Yourselves? Your violence? Your laws? And your delusions? I will never understand the concept of the world needing a Messiah to save it. I thought people who are in distress need to be saved. If you're running the world with your father Satan and your kind is privileged in the beast system, this is your heaven. Therefore, you consider yourself superior in your kingdom with your father. In addition, blessed and highly favored. Israelites, the world don't need to be saved. The people who are in captivity need to be saved. The captives in this generation need the teachings and instructions of the Messiah to lead them to the Most High to be saved. I hope you understand the reason Yeshua said, I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
The Israelites are captives in their enemies' land until this day. That is why the Messiah was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The Israelites are the group of people that are lost and need guidance in the beast system. Remember, Israelites, by their fruits you would know them. We live in a society that thrives off the outward appearance. The children of the wicked one benefit greatly from colorism in the beast culture. Pale skin, colored eyes, and blonde straight hair is praised in the beast system. The lighter your skin tone, the more opportunity and privilege you receive in the beast system. Everyone knows this. When we go behind the scenes to identify the powers that push the features that are marked to identify the strange people who are not made in the image of the Most High, suddenly the people suffer from amnesia. The outward appearance doesn't seem to matter anymore. If we live in a society where the outward appearance didn't matter, the world would be at peace. The only reason the outward appearance doesn't matter, according to the other species of mankind, the children of the wicked one are being found out. Satan do not want the spotlight on the origin of his children, nor does he want the indigenous Black people to dive deep by connecting the evidence given in the scriptures to his seed. Until this day, many tribes in Africa react just as Lamech did when they produce albino children. There are accounts of parents abandoning their albino children. History doesn't lie. The scripture said, by a person's behavior, you would know them.
Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them.
Lamech, Methuselah, and Enoch gave us a visual image of the children of the angels. The scripture said, with the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter is confirmed. We do not have to dig up the dead and use fancy equipments to study their remains to determine what species or race a person come from. The scriptures gave us the information needed to know the origin of the indigenous Black people, as well as the origin of the people with strange features that resemble the children of the angels among us. They proclaim to be the foundation to every civil righteous generation that initiate our deliverance.
And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them, for I am the Lord their God. But I will for their sakes remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt, in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their God. I am the Lord. These are the statutes and judgments and laws which the Lord made between him and the children of Israel in Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses.
And all throughout Europe and Greece till this. Who are the Europeans and who are the Hamites? Well, I am going to answer all 3 in this video right here and right now. Well, family, the news is in, and the ancient civilization of the biblical Philistines has been discovered. And with the utilization of state-of-the-art DNA, it was found that the biblical Philistines were of European descent and were the Hellenistic Greeks. Wait a minute, that sounds kind of crazy, but it's actually true. They were the Europeans. The Philistines, who originated from the tribe of Ham, their grandfather was Mizraim, as it was written in Genesis 10:14, that Casluhim, Mizraim's son, outcame the Philistines, and Caphtorim.
The Bible also says that they were people of Caphtor, and Caphtor is believed to be Crete or Cyprus, the Mediterranean Sea basically, those countries. Now you've got also an Egyptian record. The Egyptian record states that there was a group of people here living. They were people of the sea, and both accounts match.
Egyptian clay tablets, dating back to the 14th century BC, confirm the existence of the Philistines with their cities and agree with the Bible that these people came from the sea. In today's world, we would say they were practically Europeans. But both the tablets and the biblical account were under much debate until recently.
In 2013, they excavated the world's first Philistine cemetery, an enormous one with more than 210 human remains.
A few years ago, a team of archaeologists excavating Tel Ashkelon had unearthed a massive Philistine cemetery. The cemetery contained bones from multiple generations of the Philistine people. So the team ran DNA tests on the bones and found extraordinary results.
The late generations of the Philistines seem to have a mixed blood from the Levant area, making them rather a local people of the Middle East. However, the tests performed on the early generation of the Philistines had shown significant traces of European DNA. This means that even though they intermarried the local tribes at a later point, the original Philistines were of European descent.
This discovery was so monumental, it made the world news. The ancient Philistines, the people of the seas, have indeed originated from the southern Europe, the land of Caphtor, just like the Bible says.
And that is incredible because that confirms the biblical account. There were people living here. They had 5 cities, they had their own culture, they had European DNA strand, and they were gone after the 6th century BC. This is so cool.
Now, the Philistines originated in Caphtor, which is the Hebrew name for the Greek island Crete. It turns out that the Philistines were the sea people who migrated from southern Europe or Greece to the east coast of the Aegean Sea. The Philistines inhabited the Mediterranean coast of Canaan during the period of the Book of Judges. They founded a pentapolis, or 5 principalities. One was Gaza, which today is referred to as the Gaza Strip; Ashkelon, which still exists in Israel today; Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath. These cities and all throughout Europe and Greece till this day. Now, the name Philistines comes from the Hebrew word Philistah and the Greek rendering of the name Palestine, which gives us the modern name Palestine. So what does this mean, family?
Up with their own sons and created the nations of Edom. Their offsprings are named. One of Esau's wives is named with the phrase, "These are the sons of Ada," or "These are the sons of Basemat," or Oholibamah, wife of Esau. Again, where are the names of the wives of the sons of Esau? Could we have another incest abomination by the Canaanites? What do you mean? What incest am I talking about? Genesis chapter 9, verses 22 through 27, quote, "And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and he went out and told his 2 brothers without. And Shem and Japheth, having taken a garment, put it on both their backs and walked backwards, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their face was backwards, and they saw not the nakedness of their father. And Noah recovered from the wine, and knew all that his younger son had done to him. And he said, Cursed be the servant Canaan, a slave shall he be to his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his bondservant. May God make room for Japheth. Let him dwell in the habitations of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." End quote. Did you see it? The incest the scriptures just spoke about. A lot of us has read this and did not understand what this actually said. The nakedness of thy father is the key phrase to understand exactly what happened between Noah, his wife, and his younger son Ham. Leviticus chapter 18, verses 7 through 8. Quote, "Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father, nor the nakedness of thy mother, for she is thy mother. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's wife. It is thy father's nakedness." End quote. The nakedness of thy father could be the nude body of your father, but in this case, the case of Ham, it was his mother, or the wife of Noah, whom he uncovered and slept with. That's why Canaan was cursed instead of Ham. Canaan was the offspring of a mother-son relationship. Why would Noah curse an innocent person for the transgression of the father? Isn't that against the law? Remember, Yah said that he doesn't change. That's because Canaan was the product of an incestuous relationship between Ham and Noah's wife. There are laws within the Torah against incest, so much so that death is often the reward for that act. Notice, Canaan was the offspring of an incestuous relationship, and his descendants committed the same vile act years down the line. Is this why our grandparents, Isaac and Rebekah, had so much disdain for the Canaanite women that Esau chose? Sounds like a bunch of our parents today, right? Nothing new under the sun. According to HistoryDaily.org, Etruscan history, the first Romans were actually black. This is halfway down the opening paragraph. Quote, not only did the Etruscan settlement predate ancient Roman and Greek civilizations, it greatly influenced the culture of Rome. The contributions of black cultures on the Roman Empire have, sadly, been whitewashed by Eurocentric historians. End quote. So this opening paragraph states that brown-skinned Etruscans predated ancient Rome and Greek civilizations. The Etruscans, the original Romans or Greeks, greatly influenced ancient Rome and was later whitewashed by the new Caucasians. The original inhabitants of Europe were brown to dark-skinned people, the original Caucasian people. The firstborn of Esau, Chief Theman, Chief Omar, Chief Sophar, Chief Kenaz, Chief Kor, Chief Gotham, Chief Amalek. These are the chiefs of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Ada. These are the sons of Rugael, the son of Esau, Chief Nakor, Chief Zoar, Chief Somi, Chief Mosi. These are the chiefs of Rugael in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Basemath, wife of Esau. These are the sons of Olibama, wife of Esau, Chief Juz, Chief Jalon, and Chief Kor. These are the chiefs of Olibama, daughter of Anna, wife of Esau. These are the sons of Esau, and these are the chiefs. These are the sons of Edom. End quote. The same as the previous paragraph about the grandsons of Esau and who is stated as their mothers. One more fact is that verse 15 starts with even the sons of Eliphaz and ends with these are the sons of Ada after mentioning those who came from the loins of Eliphaz. The same thing for Rugael and Basemath. How I see it is that Esau died and his wives saw their offsprings, the sons of Esau, and that Canaanite blood kicked in and they slept with their own sons and created the nations of Edom. Imagine your son being your brother at the same time. Incest must be Canaan's favorite pastime, almost like it's written within their DNA or it's the spirit that follows that nation of people. Here are 13 genetic mutations that can arise from incest.
Charge the children.
All right, let's continue. Yeah. All right, this is a nice site. It's called Nuwabian. I've just found it by basically typing up Canaan, the curse of leprosy, etc. And they begin by saying, the true curse of Canaan has nothing to do with dark skin. It is a curse of the Caucasian and explains your pale skin. Ham's son Canaan and all his seed are cursed with leprosy. All the references are there in your Torah and can be detailed. This is 2 Kings, I believe, 5 verse 27. The leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. 2 Luke 4:27. As many lepers were in Israel, aka Canaan, in the time of, because Canaan, Israel, it's not over there, it's here. In the time of Elisus the prophet, and none of them was cleansed, saving Naaman the Syrian. Numbers 12 verse 10. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow, and Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. Now let me just jump to something real quick. So Miriam becomes leprous, and we know that when Miriam and Aaron actually become leprous, in the Bible talks about Miriam becoming leprous. What happened was she noticed that Moses wasn't, being with his wife intimately, and for the better for him, like she wasn't coming at him evil or anything, but she just talked badly about him to Aaron, her brother, regarding that. So the Most High did punish her, as pious and righteous as she was. So let's just read Miriam's punishment real quick, and yeah, let's go. God now gently rebuked Aaron, and try to follow along, and Miriam for their transgression, and did not give vent to his wrath until he had shown them their sin. This was an example to a man never to show anger to his neighbor before giving his reason for his anger. The effects of the Most High's wrath were shown as soon as he had departed from them, for while he was with them, his mercy exceeded his anger, and nothing happened to them. But when he was not long with them, punishment set in. Both Aaron and Miriam became leprous, for this is the punishment ordained for those who speak ill of their neighbors. Aaron's leprosy, however, lasted for a moment only, for his sin had not been as great as that of his sister, who started the talk against Moses. His disease vanished as soon as he looked upon his leprosy. Not so with Miriam. Aaron in vain tried to direct his eyes upon her leprosy in this way to heal her, for in her case the effect was the reverse. As soon as he looked upon her, the leprosy increased, and nothing remained but to call for Moses' assistance, who was already to give it before being called upon. Aaron therefore turned to his brother with the following words: Think not that the leprosy is on Miriam's body only. It is as if it were on the body of our father Amram, whose flesh and blood she is. Aaron did not, however, try to extenuate their sin, saying to Moses, Have we, Miriam and I, ever done harm to a human being? Moses, no. Aaron, if we have done evil to no strange people, how then canst thou believe that we wish to harm thee? For a moment only did we forget ourselves and acted in an unnatural way toward our brother. Shall we therefore lose our sister? If now here, please pay attention. If Miriam's leprosy doth not now vanish, she must pass all her life as a leper. For only a priest who is not a relative by blood of the leper may under certain conditions declare her clean. But all the priests, my sons and I, are her relatives by blood. The life of a leper is as of one dead. The life of a leper is as of one dead, for as a corpse makes unclean all that comes in contact with it, so too the leper. Alas! So Aaron closed his intercession. Shall our sister who was with us in Egypt, who with us intoned the song at the Red Sea, who took upon herself the instruction of the women while we instructed the men, shall she now, while we are about to leave the desert and enter the promised land, sit shut out from the camp? After reading this, I just wanted you guys to understand how serious leprosy is. It further goes down to say that Miriam, she, like I said, she didn't have evil intent, but the Most High wanted to teach Israel a lesson as a whole, since such a righteous woman went through that. It's a serious deal. It would have been the life of lepers is of one dead. All right, we're right back to this Nubian website. The curse of Ham isn't about dark skin, but rather the disease of leprosy, of which a side effect causes whitened skin. Reverend S.C. Blackledge, who stated in his book, An Open Book on Hidden Mystery, page 55, that Canaan is a cursed albino seed that spawned the Caucasian race. Albinism and vitiligo was historically known as white leprosy, of which this particular form of leprosy is now referenced as alphos. God delivers them to you, and you defeat them. You must doom them to destruction, grant them no turns, and give them no quarter. This is what you shall do to them. You shall tear down their altars, smash their pillars, cut down their sacred posts, and consign their images to the fire. You shall destroy all the peoples that the Lord your God delivers to you. Show them no pity. The Lord your God will dislodge these people before you little by little. You will not be able to put an end to them at once, else the wild beasts would multiply to your hurt. The Lord your God will deliver them up to you, throwing them into utter panic until they are wiped out. He will deliver their kings into your hand, and you shall obliterate their name from under the heavens. That's what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to obliterate their name from under the heavens. They're not even supposed to be alive right now. But because we did not do that, which is also in the Bible, let me see. Let me get it real quick for you. All right, let's just fix. All right, so I just want to read down. All right. Those of the inhabitants who were not put to the sword by the Israelites fled to Egypt and sought refuge there. Now, when they say Egypt, they don't mean the Egypt that was destroyed, Atlantis Egypt. They mean the Egypt legit. Let me go to the map real quick. All right, brothers and sisters, I'm showing this map to you to show the way where Phoenicians basically their travels. Okay? Now, first, you're tuned in now. I gotta say this in the beginning, but I hope. Well, if you're tuned in now, what I can say to you is please continue to watch this. I know this is a sensitive topic, leprosy and stuff like that, but we're learning who we are. Now it's time to learn who our enemy is. Our enemies are Canaanites. Our enemies are so-called Caucasians. We need to understand this because our people have been desensitized. We don't understand who these people are. They aren't us. They're supposed to be dead. They're not even supposed to be alive right now. The Most High does not care about these people. He wanted us to obliterate their name from under the heavens. It's just the truth. The more you dig, like literally this video, various parts of Palestine. On a high note in the northern Samarian hills in the heart of the Israelite settlement region, on an open cult place has been found, which perhaps one of the four examples known as high places, etc. Bronze statues of bulls are to be found throughout Canaanite culture, particularly of Hazor and Ugarit. In the History of Denmark by Sum, published in 1775, the arrival of the Canaanites in Scandinavia is recorded. Messenius says that the Canaanites, which were driven out by Joshua, came to Scandia. Is Scandia on here at least? Dang, Scandia is not even on here. Came to Scandia, which they called henceforth Scandinavia. This is supposed to have happened 840 years after the flood, and Angrim Janae, the learned Icelander, insists that the Canaanites driven out by Joshua were the first inhabitants of the north, and I'm thinking North America maybe is what they meant, but it cuts it off right here. I'm gonna have to look deeper into that. And it says, by the time Gathalus and his followers reached Germany in the decades immediately after following the Exodus, they found the Canaanites already in residence there. They, Gathalus, Scata, and their followers went at last till they reached Germany. They made a halt in it. It is there that there came a troop of the soldiers of the picked folk, a name the Canaanites were called by other nations. Now, prior to this, I read that these picked folk were also known as Frasians, and they were tatted up barbarians, basically. Another name for these people are picked folks, and they wear tattoos and stuff. And the picked folk, on account of the fame and glory of that sea expedition of Galam, they having had knowledge. Matter of fact, let me pause real quick. Okay, I just want you guys to see something. Look at this dude. He's tatted up. He's pale. He's pale and he's tatted up. The picked folk were described as barbarous savages who were also tatted up. Just things like that, Just things like that. But let me continue where I was. Fierce and warlike, they're extremely barbarous. So back to this. As I said, the curse of Ham is not about dark skin, but rather disease. Where does it state in the Tanakh the nature the nature of this curse against Canaan, other than the land of Canaan being riddled with leprosy in the book of Leviticus? The land of Canaan, aka Israel, aka here in the Americas, of course being Raham's son settled. Definition 2 of Strong Concordance defines the word Canaan as the follows: the land west of the Jordan, peopled by the descendants of Canaan and subsequently conquered by the Israelites under Joshua. And Leviticus 14 verse 34 confirmed that the land was riddled with leprosy. As defined, the land was not conquered by the Israelites until the book of Joshua. So clearly the Leviticus biblical verse 14 verse 34 is the only consenting reference and defines a plague that which could be considered the curse of Canaan as prophesied. Ye become When Aaron heard of the death of his sons, he said, All Israel saw thee at the Red Sea, as well as at Sinai, without suffering injury thereafter. But my sons whom thou didst order to dwell in the tabernacle, a place that a layman may not enter without being punished by death, my sons entered the tabernacle to behold thy strength and thy might, and they died. God hereupon said to Moses, Tell Aaron the following, I have shown thee great favor and have granted thee great honor through this, that thy sons have been burnt. I assigned to thee and thy sons a place nearer to the sanctuary, before all others, even before thy brother Moses. But I have also decreed that whosoever enters the tabernacle without having been commanded, he shall be stricken with leprosy. Wouldst thou have wished thy sons, to whom the innermost places had been assigned, to sit as lepers outside the encampment as a penalty for having entered the Holy of Holies? When Moses imparted these words to his brother, Aaron said, I thank thee, O God, for that which thou hast shown me in causing my sons to die, rather than having them waste their lives as lepers. It behooves me to thank thee and praise thee, because thy loving kindness is better than life. My lips shall praise thee. Numbers 5 verse 2.
It was extraterrestrials that made the Caucasus leper 6,000 years ago. These extraterrestrials who mixed their DNA with humans recorded in their Torah, Gospel, and Quran. One of whom they called Ziasudra or Utnapishtim, Noah, of the flood, was born with an illuminated body, read in the book of Enoch, shining crystal and would transfigure, shape-shift when he 17:7, satyrs, pan, goat men. So Ham was not supposed to see Noah in transfigured state as Jesus let his followers see him. Matthew 17:1-2, Mark 9:2-13, and Luke 9:28-36. Ham was used to birth a fourth son, Laban or Canaan the albino, genetically diseased with leprosy, Leviticus chapter 13, and would mix with the evil extraterrestrials, giving them this deadly disease to eliminate them. Canaan is the father of the Canaanites or Caucasus race, cursed with baris, leprosy. So in fact they were bred to be a germed man to spread the destructive physical disease, and the Kamahu, Pleiadians, quarantined them for 4 cycles of 6,000 years, or 24,000 years that would have removed these devils off the planet Earth. Actually these Kamahu, Pleiadians, were under the as in Genesis 24:3, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven, and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, and spread their genes and sicknesses and diseases and evil wicked way of doing and thinking. Genesis 6:4-5, America in the South. During the civil wars of much racism, you find in the southeast of America, a group of devils called the Secret Six: Thomas Wentworth Higginson, Samuel Gridley Howe, Theodore Parker, Franklin Benjamin Sanborn, Garrett Smith, and George Luther Stearns, who represent the Viking, or VI King, which is Six Kings thinking. They subdivide into many groups world over, moved and mixed their diseased leper blood, took over others' lands, names and religions. They are Pakakasu, and in the Bible Pa-ka-anu. So you see both of Canaan's parents had recessive, not dominant genes. The Bible, Torah, describes Canaan's leprosy as having white skin in Leviticus 13:4, where it says, if the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and in sight be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. And for those who will try to say that it doesn't say white in the original language, you are wrong, because the word being used in Aramaic, Hebrew, in this quote for white is laban, meaning white. Leviticus 13:30 says, in part, and there be in it a yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dry skull, even a leprosy upon the head or beard. The word being used here for yellow is zawob, meaning yellow, blonde, hair. They even go as far as describing the texture of this yellow hair and says that it seswazdak, which means thin or fine. Now you tell me, if white skin, and yellow or blonde, thin or fine hair describes a Moor? You can't, because when the Bible is speaking of leprosy they are referring to the cursed Canaanite. Leprosy affects the skin, the eyes, and the mucous membranes of the nose and throat. It mainly affects the nerves. Labanah, Canaan, was born pale, and an albino with vitiligo, and received the curse of leprosy and servitude. The Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, word albino is amhak, which is from the root word mahaka, and means albino. However, the Aramic, Hebrew, word is Laban, meaning white. That is why he was originally named Labanah, white as milk, by his parents Ham and Halima. According to the American Heritage Dictionary, albinism is defined as 1. Congenital absence of normal pigmentation or coloration in a person, an animal, or a plant. 2. The condition of being an albino. French albinism, from German albinismus, from albino, albino, from Portuguese. According to the Taber's Encyclopedic Medical Dictionary, it means albino, an organism lacking normal pigmentation, such as a person having abnormally pale skin, very light hair, and lacking normal eye coloring. Albinism is a hereditary condition in which an organism cannot produce pigment, color. Only individuals with 2 albino genes have this disorder. Albinism, Portuguese from Latin albus, white. Absence of pigment in the skin, hair and eye, partial or total. Albinism is a hereditary condition in which an organism cannot produce pigment, color. Leprosy is defined as a chronic, mildly contagious granulomatous disease of tropical and subtropical regions, caused by the Bacillus Mycobacterium leprae, characterized by ulcers of the skin, bone, and viscera and leading to loss of sensation, paralysis, gangrene, and deformation. Middle English leprous, from leprous, leprous. There are many forms of leprosy that are not openly accepted as such by the medical profession today. These forms are encountered every day, such as oral herpes or eczema. Labanah, Canaan, lacked pigmentation. He was melanin recessive, so his skin became pale and translucent, making it possible to see the veins. Canaan's descendants had straight, 6 ether, light hair as a result of leprosy. Canaan himself didn't have straight hair, he had woolly hair. He was still a Moor, just an albino, though he carried the gene that caused his descendants to be born with leprosy. His 4th son, Amor, was the father of the Amorites, and his brother Jebus was father of the Jebusites, Exodus 25. You will not prostrate yourself to them nor serve them, for I Yahuwah your Elohim am a jealous El, the one visiting the iniquity of the father upon the children up to the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me. Exodus 25 is talking about the 4th son. This implication is that it's talking about a certain group that was being cursed, and it was the Amorites. The curse will fall on the 4th generation, genealogy, meaning father to son. So the curse wasn't upon Ham, it was upon his 4th son Labanah, Canaan, Genesis 15:16. Leviticus 14:34. Labanah, Canaan, was a clean type of leper, meaning civilized. In Haran there was the unclean leper, and they were unclean all the way back to the Caucasus Mountains and its surrounding areas. These unclean lepers of animalistic nature walked on all 4s, ate raw flesh no matter whether it was clean or unclean, and were covered with raw open sores. They were literally half animal and half man because of bestiality. This is why lepers and the seed of Labanah, Canaan, are called mankind. Man is the civilizer of mankind, from your dark-haired and dark-eyed, to your light-haired and light-eyed, to your albinos, lacking eye color and hair color. Throughout history, the original inhabitants of the ancient Canaan and their descendants to leave those countries and go back into the shadows of the caves. That is the real reason they are building indoor malls and shopping centers, underground tunnels, underground subways, and housing complexes with stores in them, making where you will not even have to leave your home. All of this is pulling the Canaanites out of the sun. Because they cannot survive under the sun, they have to get off the surface of the earth and go where the climate is conducive to their conditions. Thus, they are going back to what they originally were, and that is cave dwellers. The new Babylon is in the west. It is filled with as much devilishment as the city of Sodom and Gomorrah of Lot and Abraham's time. This is why you as Moors must not become a part of it, or have your children subjected to it. These disagreeable beings are cold, heartless, and malicious. Murder is taken very lightly in most cases where people are killed. For instance, with all the wars that have happened between the Arabs and the so-called Jews, Jebusites of Canaan, the land of Palestine is still being bombed today. The so-called Jews, who are really from Germany, do not want to stop the wars. They are trying to convince the world that Palestine is really theirs when it is not. This is the nature of the Canaanite and his seed, and they are regressing back to their original state. You know that the sons of Canaan know who they are and where they came from. You should have known that there was something different about him when you realized that he could not live under the sun. Think about it. They claim they were the first people on the planet Earth. Why would God allow his chosen people to get burned or catch all types of skin cancers from the sun, which is something that this same God created to sustain the life on the planet Earth? Are you saying that God made a mistake? That he didn't know that the sun would have those effects on his chosen people? It doesn't add up, and they know this. That is why he has you worshipping his image. And now with the coming forth of the sun cycle, he knows his 6,000-year rule is almost over. The Melanite recessive race has to hurry up and move underground or he will be burned up by the sun. He is afraid that you will take over. Why else would he want you under so much control? It is because he is jealous of you. He knows that if he gives you an inch, you will find a way to take a mile. That is why he steals everything from you and takes the credit for it. As in the case of Egypt, he knows that Moors are responsible for the construction of all those great civilizations, yet he tries to say that it belongs to them, and will do everything to make you believe that. Why would you suppress someone if you are not intimidated by them? That's why he is trying all kinds of ways to keep you and your children under the spell. For what other reason would he not want you to get ahead in life? There wouldn't be any other reason other than jealousy. Stop wanting to live in the image of the beast. Live in the image of your own great ancestor. Stop trying to be like him, dressing like him, walking and talking like him, dyeing your hair blonde, piercing your lips, tongue, eyebrows, and multiple places on your ears. Stop dressing in gothic black and motorcycle boots, and altering your appearance to look like his. The Anakim have done an excellent job in making you hate yourself. Start being yourselves. Build your own nation, get your own culture, create your own style of dress, and eat your own foods. When will you realize that he does not, and will not ever accept you in his society? No matter how much you try to emulate him, you will not be fully accepted.
Yeah, I remember you did an interview recently where you talked about some of the, the racist things that people have said about black people and monkeys and so forth. But you said when you actually scientifically look at white people, monkeys are hairy. White people are the hairiest people
on Earth.
On Earth. I am really hairy. Like, no, seriously.
I don't shave.
No, I shave all. I'm shaving
I
right
know.
now.
I
got hair on my back,
coming up
my
up
chest
through
is all hairy.
the hair coming up
hair on my ears,
collar. Okay,
these
were highly overlooked similarities.
Yeah, the big ears. White people usually have big ears.
Bigger ears around.
Monkeys have thin lips. White people, I have thin lips.
Yes.
So really, I look more like a monkey than anyone else. But then there's the whole racist stereotype that
and it start with the fully hairy bodies, the huge ears, I
have big ears,
and the person who wants. Look at my ear here. How big is that?
Pretty small.
All right.
Yeah.
And people say, well, how about Obama? He's the first black president, and he's got big ears. He's exactly half white.
Well, we
call him a black president.
Well, no, yeah, his dad comes from Africa.
He's
mom
exactly
is totally white. He's exactly half
white.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
No doubt those big ears come from his mama. Okay. So the point is, I'm just saying, look how easy it is to be racist.
Right.
And take a look at a chimpanzee's lips. They're razor thin. All right. And we've got some very famous large-lipped black people, Jay-Z among them. All right. I don't have small lips. So they overlooked so much.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to add one just while you went there. So I'm going to add one.
Let's go.
Do you know lice outbreaks are 30 times more likely in white people than in black people?
Really?
The lice just don't enjoy black hair. Okay. For whatever reasons, it is 30 times more likely. Okay. Just if you put lice in the hair, it'll want to go to the white people's hair. We ever see chimpanzees pruning each other?
Oh yeah, they pick the
They're
lice
picking out the lice, and
right.
apparently lice is tasty because they eat it.
Yeah.
How are his hidden things sought out? Now, I consider that, I believe, is the key to the book. For I'm faint, therefore was his name called Edom. Edom means red, or sunburned, actually. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, behold, I'm at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, swear. How are his hidden? For I'm faint, therefore was his name called Edom. Edom means red, or sunburned, actually. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, behold, I'm at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he swore to him, sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink and rose up and went his way. That is, he didn't care. And thus Esau despised his birthright. Now, as we said, Edom means red and hairy. It means sunburn. And a sunburn occurs when the skin is able to absorb all the rays of the light except the rays that make it red. And it's quite interesting to see that the sunburned man in Scripture is the man who could not absorb the light of heaven, and it burned him. Friends, the light of heaven will either save you or burn you, one or the other. And you'll either absorb it or you'll be burned by it. It's always true. Now, this is the story of Esau, a man who was opposite to Jacob, who became Israel, a prince with God. Esau represents the flesh, and he became Edom. Israel represents the spirit. Now, we have seen Esau in the first book of the Old Testament. Now we come now to the last book of the Old Testament and read this strange language. I've loved you, saith the Lord. Yet ye say, in what way hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith the Lord? Yet I loved Jacob and I hated Esau. That's in Malachi 1, 2, and part of 3. Now that's a strange statement, is it not? Now God says in the last book of the Old Testament, I loved Jacob and I hated Esau. And that immediately presents a problem. A student came one time to Dr. Griffith Thomas, and he said to him, Dr. Thomas, I'm having a problem with this statement in Malachi. And Dr. Thomas says, what's your problem? He said, well, I cannot understand why God says that he hates Esau. Dr. Thomas replied to the young man, he says, young man, I'm having a problem with that verse too, but my problem is different from yours. I cannot understand why he said that he loved Jacob. I can understand why he hated Esau, but I can't understand why he loved Jacob. Now, the thing that lends importance to the little book of Obadiah, for it's the only place in the Word of God where you have the explanation of why God hated Esau. And again, I turn to the key verse. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought out? Now, Ginsburg, the great Hebrew scholar, translates it this way. How are the things of Esau stripped bare? In other words, in the little book of Obadiah here, there is open before us, for the first time, Edom, or Esau. In other words, Obadiah puts a microscope down on Esau, and when you look through the eyepiece, you see Edom. Not only did Obadiah focus the microscope on him, but Obadiah is God's microscope. And you come here and look through the microscope. Will you look? What do you see? One Esau now is magnified. And that has become a nation of 250,000 little Esau. And that's Edom. And you could take a picture to a photographer, a little miniature, and he makes an enlarged picture. He says, I blew up the picture. Well, Obadiah is the blown-up picture of Esau. You inflate a tire tube to find a tiny leak in it. You couldn't find the leak until you inflated it. Just so Obadiah presents Esau inflated so that you can see where the flaw was in his life. And you won't maybe find it back in Genesis. You can see why God said he hated Esau. You see, what was at the beginning a little pimple under the skin is now a raging and angry cancer. What was small in Esau is now magnified 100,000 times in the nation. It's interesting to note, God did not say at the beginning that he hated Esau. He had to wait until he became a nation, and he could reveal the thing that caused him to hate Esau. And I want, therefore, we won't have time today, but tomorrow, I want you to come and look with me under the microscope, God's microscope, that Obadiah put before us and we are going to see why God hated Esau.
Shalom, everybody. Back again with another. Is that Ham saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brethren without. Now, most people, when they read this, they literally think that he saw his father naked. Now, Ham's dad was none other than Noah. Ham was one of the 8 survivors of the flood. He was aboard the ark. It was Ham, his wife, his 2 brothers and their wives, and Noah and his wife. So he saw the nakedness of his father, but this verse does not literally mean that he saw Noah naked. No, it did not involve any kind of homosexual act or anything like that. Let's turn to Leviticus, the book of Leviticus, chapter 18 and verse 8. That verse will let you know who was involved in Ham's sin. Not Noah directly, I can tell you that. Okay, here's Leviticus chapter 18 and verse 8. Verse 8 says, "The nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness." So the nakedness of Noah's wife was uncovered because that is his father's nakedness. So the nakedness of one's father is actually referring to the father's wife and her nakedness being uncovered. As it says here in the first part of this verse, verse 8, "The nakedness of your father's wife you will not uncover." Why? It is your father's nakedness. So why did Canaan get cursed? Why not Ham? Because Ham produced Canaan. And this involved the nakedness of his father, involved Noah's wife, his stepmom, Ham's stepmom. That's why Canaan got cursed. He was an illegitimate son. He was born of incest. That's why this verse is letting you know, hey, Ham is the father of Canaan, and he saw the nakedness of his father, which in reality is the nakedness of his father's wife. As it says here, the nakedness of your father's wife you will not uncover.
And that's what so research, and not all Arians will confess this truth, but there are many Arians who begin to recognize that this is exactly the truth that many of our teachers and leaders have been speaking, that the 11 sons of Canaan or the 11 sons of Canaan are the modern Eurocentric or European Indo-European nations. And we'll go through a whole list of these European nations. Many references to this, the Jehovah's Witnesses years ago put it out, but then they got beat up by their Christian so-called brothers and sisters and other whites who didn't like what the implications of the fact that black people are not from the cursed seed of Canaan, the cursed seed of Canaanites or the Canaan were actually white peoples. So they didn't like that. But here we're just going to show you a couple of Google searches that you can go to various different pages, you understand, by other authors and researchers that will prove this fact to you. First of all, look up the word Aryan, you understand, Canaanites and Hebrew together, as we did, and a few interesting researches are found. First of all, it says on the Canaan Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia in the Hebrew Bible, and we just look at the highlights that come up in the search. We're not going to the page just yet. It says, in the Hebrew Bible, the land of Canaan extends from Lebanon southward across ... associated with the Indo-Aryan rulers, the Indo-European or the Hindi Aryan rulers of the Hurrians, known as Mitanni, right? Now it says by the time of the second temple, when some of the Israelites returned out of captivity, out of Assyrian Babylon, it says Canaanite and Hebrew had come to mean now something a little bit different, merchants and everything like that. Interesting that the word Canaanites, as we come to this modern age, the so-called common era, comes to mean merchants. You understand? Oh, pirates, yes, they robbed I. They sold us to the merchant ships, the Canaanite ships. All right. Here's we're going to prove it again. Whatever happened to the Canaanites? From this page, AryanNationsRevival.org. They say the Hittite and Canaanite deity is one of our favorites. Notice, Aryan Nation Revival, they're admitting that the Hittite and the Canaanite deity, their god, is one of our favorites. After all, who else would ... And I have seen our Messiah represented as an Aryan, as he should be. In other words, white, blonde hair, blue-eyed. They agree with that. You know what I'm saying? So those people that don't want to accept the facts, there's something deeper behind the reason why they can't accept the woolly-haired Ethiopian complexion Messiah as being the true Messiah, as the Bible and as ancient archaeology and history in the catacombs clearly states. Let's move on. Moving on down here, we have Aryan origins from a page, members.tripod.com. And it says, and Numbers 26:51 says that just before this Hebrew genocide, notice what it said, the Hebrew genocide of the Hittite. What they're saying basically, to put it in simple language, when black people, you understand, when peoples of Ethiopian and darker hues and complexions ran the world order, the old world order, you understand, which was, or the first world order, some would say, which was ruled by black, dark-skinned people, the Ethiopians, the ancient Egyptians, you understand, and even some of the earliest so-called Babylonian rulers way out there where Nimrod and the rest of them had went to, so forth and so on. It says that just before the Hebrew genocide of the Hittite, in plain language, they're saying before the black genocide of white peoples. You see, so when you read in the Bible about the Hittites and the Canaanites being killed off by Joshua and the tribes and others of them, and David against the Philistine, it was basically black against these recessive gene people, you understand, so-called, I guess you would call them mulattoes or albinos, clean lepers, white folks, various stages of them, and the ancient catacombs from, not the catacombs, but the wall paintings actually from Egypt show some pictures of it. Even there's a couple of pictures which they don't show you anymore, which clearly even shows that the captives were blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. And when they show you a more broad range of it, you see where all the other peoples, like the Nubians, had dark skin, black, you could say, complexions, where the Egyptians, some of the Ethiopians had different stages of reddish brownish complexion. And then they show you other peoples, you understand, who basically had white complexions or so-called pale complexions, distinguished from lighter skinned black peoples. So you see the lighter skinned black peoples, and then you also see the what we would call the pale peoples, or the white people. So people wouldn't think that we're being so-called racist, we're being historical and factual. Because right here on the Aryan Origins Zone site, they say that just before this Hebrew genocide of the Hittite and other Aryan nations of Canaan. You see, so the Aryan nations were the nations, the 11 sons that occupied Canaan. So the whole curse on Ham is a lie. But now they use that. Now when they started to rule the so-called world order in Europe, rose up out of the Middle Ages, the so-called dark, ignorant ages, and they started to rule as the black peoples of the Middle East and Africa started to go into their recession, in other words, you understand? So the whole order was flipped upside down on its head. But we can continue to go on and talk about Semites exterminating Canaanites, Aryan, Celtic farmers fled. You see what they say? Aryan, Celtics connected with Canaanite farmers fled. Let's go a little bit further. When we go a little bit further down here, it says the enigmatic Hebrew anti-Semitism. You understand? anti-Semitism. So the Hebrews are often considered a Canaanite group. They're often reconsidered now as a Canaanite group because they can't admit that the real Hebrews are black peoples. You understand? So you have to understand that we're not making this up when we state that the Canaanites are or were white peoples. You understand, were European peoples, and the curse in the Bible is actually the curse of Canaan or the curse of Canaan, and it's not the curse on Ham. Now, it's very interesting because when the Bible says in that excerpt about Noah, there's two things you need to understand very clearly. It says that Noah wasn't a perfect man, but he was righteous. And legally speaking, you understand, in a legalistic way, he was righteous. You understand, he was right before the law, you understand, of Yahweh. That's why his particular seed, right? Now, after the flood, he got drunk, you understand, and he went into his tent and, probably had intimacy with his wife or whatever like that. You understand, after the flood, this is a very distressful situation, and they didn't have these phobias on sexuality, you understand. So he got a little bit, he blame it on the alcohol, blame it on the what was it, alcohol. What was that song? I forgot the melody of that, but you know the song I'm talking about, blame on the alcohol. So this is a blame on the alcohol. Noah, basically, we can blame on the alcohol. He went into his tent, and then Ham, you know, or Kemet, Ham, went into the temple, and he went into the tent, and he saw that his father was naked, or he saw his father's nakedness. This is what the Bible states. Now it's interesting because many of the the Jews, and then later on the Europeans, the white peoples, the British, the Anglos, and the Saxons, and the rest of them, they began to purport that, well, since Ham in their view is Egypt and black folks, then it must be some sort of sodomy or homosexual act. That's what they have said, and that's what many people said, that when he saw the next to his father. They may not go into all the details, you understand, but basically that's what they are alluding to. But the Bible clearly teaches that the nakedness of a man is his wife. So this is what's very interesting about it, that the nakedness of a man is actually his wife. If you go into Leviticus, it actually speaks about the nakedness, you understand, of a man is actually his wife. So in a biblical way, if you see the nakedness of a man, you've basically seen expose the nakedness of this man, you've exposed his wife. It's not like over here you pull down somebody's pants and look at their nakedness. No, it says that you're going into their wife. It's a so-called polite way or a scriptural way, you understand, to say that someone has violated your bed and violated your wife. So now when Ham went in, he saw the nakedness of his.
This is the study of white people in the scriptures. Fact, the ancestors of all people were as dark as today's Africans. White people come from leprous people of color. Leprosy, the original white person. Eumelanin is a pigmentation responsible for the hair color blonde, brown, and black. People with less eumelanin have blonde hair. All these people have leprosy. They are called clean lepers according to the scriptures. Leviticus 13:13. Then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy cover all the flesh, he shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague. It is all turned white. He is clean. This man is on his way to being an albino. His condition is called vitiligo. The Bible calls him an unclean leper. Was Michael Jackson cursed with leprosy? What is leprosy according to the scriptures? Let's read about Moses when Yahweh turned his hand leprous. Exodus 4:6. And Yahweh said furthermore unto him, Put now thine hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said, Put thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom, and behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. Numbers 12, 9 through 13. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against them, and he departed. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle. And behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. The evolution of the so-called white race is written in the scriptures, and they are not all related. Gehazi, servant of Elijah, 2 Kings 5:1. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honorable, because by him Yahweh had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by the servants. The leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. Genesis 9, verse 18. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. Ham sees Noah naked, and Noah curses Canaan his son, and makes Canaan a servant of his brothers. Introducing Canaan, the son of Ham. Don't be surprised. Canaan was white. The evidence does not show him to be black or African. I would wager a good portion of white people are Canaanites. Many will say that being black is the curse of Canaan, but that is not so. According to the scriptures, there is no curse for being black, but turning white. The Edomites, the birth of a new race. Genesis 25, verse 21. And Isaac entreated Yahweh for his wife, because she was barren, and Yahweh was entreated of him. And Rebekah his wife conceived, and the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red, all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came out his brother, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare him. You can read for yourself how hairy Esau was. He was hairy as a goat. The scriptures never lie, all over like a hairy garment. Esau is alive and well, my friends. Red hair is associated with fair skin color, freckles, and sensitivity to ultraviolet light. There is no doubt that Esau was a white man. It is no surprise red hair is common among Ashkenazi Jews. That's because Esau mixed with the Canaanites. Genesis 36, verse 1. Now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan. These Jewish people are clearly Edomites or Canaanites. They are not Israelites. Their own faces tell on them. Modern-day Jews with Canaanite features, Esau mixed with the Canaanites, so he will look like a mixture of the two.
Reference H567 defines the Amorite as such: a sayer, one of the peoples of East Canaan and beyond the Jordan, dispossessed by the Israelite incursion from Egypt. Smith's Bible Dictionary defines the Amorites this way: dwellers on the summits, mountaineers, one of the chief nations who possessed the land of Canaan before its conquest by the Israelites. As dwelling on the elevated portions of the country, they are contrasted with the Canaanites, who were the dwellers in the Shephelah, or lowlands, and the two thus formed the main broad divisions of the Holy Land, number 1329, and see Genesis 14:7, Deuteronomy 1:7, and Deuteronomy 1:20. The mountain of the Amorites, Deuteronomy 1:44, Joshua 5:1, Joshua 10:6, and Joshua 11:3. They first occupied the barren heights west of the Dead Sea, at the place called afterwards En-Gedi. From this point they stretched west to Hebron. At the date of the invasion of the country, Sihon, their then king, had taken the rich pasture land south of Hermon, Deuteronomy 3:8, and Deuteronomy 4:48, embracing Gilead and all Bashan, Deuteronomy 3:10, with the Jordan Valley on the east of the river, Deuteronomy 4:49. After the conquest of Canaan, nothing of importance is heard of the Amorites in the Bible. Easton's Bible Dictionary defines the Amorites this way: Highlanders or hillmen, the name given to the descendants of one of the sons of Canaan, Genesis 14:7, called Amorah, or both Sihon and Og were independent kings. Only one word of the Amorite language survives: Shenir, the name they gave to Mount Hermon, Deuteronomy 3:9. Now, the first time we encounter the Amorites is post-flood in Genesis 14, when they, along with several other Canaanite tribes, are conquered by Chedorlaomer and his confederacy of kings. The Amorites lived in Hazazon Tamar in Canaan at that time, Genesis 14:7. In Antiquities of the Jews, Book 1, the Jewish general turned historian, Flavius Josephus, names Amoraeus as ancestor to the Amorites. Noah's son Ham fathered Canaan, Genesis 10:6, who was the progenitor of the post-flood Nephilim tribes. Amoraeus was the son of Canaan, from whom the Amorites descend, Genesis 10:15-18. Genesis 10:15-18 reads, Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, the Jebusite, the Amorite, the Girgashite, the Hivite, the Archite, the Sinite, the Arvadite, the Zemarite, and the Hamathite. And afterward, the families of the Canaanites were spread abroad. The territory of the Canaanite extended from Sidon, going toward Gerar, as far as Gaza, and going toward Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, as far as Lasha. In Numbers 13, when Israel's spies returned from their 40-day reconnaissance mission in the land of Canaan, they gave their report of the land and its fierce inhabitants. They identified the Amorites along with the Amalekites, Hittites, Jebusites, and Canaanites residing in the land as the descendants of Anak. Numbers 13:28-29. Now, after this initial report too. Now, Israel tragically failed to completely eradicate all the Canaanite tribes during their conquest of the Promised Land, Judges 1:27-36, and against God's orders to utterly wipe out the Canaanites in Deuteronomy 7 and 20, Israel reached a period of peace between themselves and the Amorites, 1 Samuel 7:3-14.